Hello, welcome to the summary video for the Waste Exemptions Alpha project. This is replacing the show and tell, which was postponed because it was 40 degrees. And because next week is our final week, we're having another show and tell then, but we thought let's have a quick update in the meantime. I'll dive straight in. So in the previous show and tell, in the previous sprint, we were testing our hypothesis that users are not comprehending the D1 waste exemption content because it's unclear and poorly structured. D1 waste exemption being, of course, depositing waste from dredging inland waters. And we showed users our new prototype, which with clearer and better structured content, and they found it easier to understand than the current content, which was great. But this sprint, we were testing a slightly different hypothesis that users were not engaging with the content very much, or reading it particularly, and therefore not registering the correct exemptions. So we built a prototype that makes users answer a series of questions, kind of one per page. You might be familiar with the format from other government services you might have used, like Get a Passport, that kind of thing, to help them find out if they should register a D1 exemption and whether they might be eligible. Our premise was that the more interactive format would force users to engage with the content because they're clicking it and it's one bit at a time, more than the flat format that we showed previously. So this kind of decision tree, kind of almost flowchart approach, what it meant it was really that users have to stop and consider each question one by one, ask themselves, what does this mean? How does it relate to me? And they also only see information that's relevant to them, because if they click no to something, it means we don't need to show them that bit because it's not relevant to them. They're telling us that. And there's also a beginning and an end to the journey for all users. So they come into it at the start and the end of the end. And ideally, there's nothing left that's vague or not answered of this prototype. So there might be some stuff that we missed out. But what we really wanted to learn was whether the content can work in that format for the D1 waste exemption, and then more broadly, might it work for other exemptions? Are we able to provide just the information that users need to be able to have the confidence to say, yes, I should register a D1 exemption, or no, I shouldn't? And we wanted to know if presenting the content in this way actually increased the user's understanding of what the exemption meant and what it meant that they had to do. What we didn't do, though, we weren't including any compliance-related content, really. We either removed it or reduced it where we couldn't remove it. And the focus is really just on giving users the confidence to be able to register. So not necessarily all about the things that they have to do after they registered it. We also obviously didn't perfect the content. We did our best, but we're doing this in short iterations. The key was just figuring out whether the format could work. So I'll quickly show you the prototype that we've got. So hopefully you can see it on my screen on your video now. This is our prototype. This will get shown to users. They would say, we would tell them the context that we were expecting them to find this in real life. You're trying to figure out if you should register exemption or not. You click on this link, it takes you here to find out if you can register this exemption. So you click on the button, and then I'll say, will you leave the waste next to the water you've registered from? You would say yes, or you'd say no, and then you click continue. Well, these buttons don't actually work. It's hidden buttons down here, they have to click. I say yes, I would do. Will you deposit more than 50 cubic meters of waste on any 1 meter of land in any 12-month period? What a question. We found that very difficult to visualize ourselves, so we added in a little bit of helpful content to say 7 meters high by 7 meters deep is how you could possibly think about it, and that's about the height of a 2-story terraced house, which is pretty big. It's quite a lot. So we're going to say no, we're not going to deposit that much waste. Just say no. Will we screen the waste? I mean, take things out. Any big items or litter or anything in there? Yes, we will screen the waste. So I'll click yes. And lo and behold, we can register a D1 waste exemption activity, and it tells us that we can do. And then the onward journey for this, we're expecting would then be, okay, they're going to register that exemption, we'll tell them, yeah, check you're ready for it, you got all your info, and then that would take you on to the portal where you might register your exemption. That was that. So we tested that with some users. We got some good feedback on that from both Welsh and English speakers on both prototypes actually in the last few weeks. Some really interesting insights. One user talked about what the word waste meant to them and how he expected it to be different from what NRW meant by it. To him, it was litter. But NRW, he felt, had a broader definition of it, which I think is accurate. And that was something that we haven't considered. Things like the check if you can get ready page. Someone was saying, why do I need to check if I can get ready? Why would I be here if I wasn't ready? An interesting challenge. So we were able to get some very interesting perspectives on those prototypes. We also spoke with some consultants, people who help farmers with various things on their farm, but especially a lot of the admin paperwork stuff. So we're able to get some good perspectives from them on the prototypes and exemptions more generally as well from them, and people who help farmers through the farmers' unions. Farmers do tend to get a lot of help from the unions. So that was really interesting as well. Now both prototypes were very content heavy, so we felt it was really important for us to make sure that we had high quality Welsh versions of both prototypes. So we had to think about how we might do that instead of just sending off the finished English language version to the translation team and getting a direct translation. We wanted to kind of co-create as far as we could in Welsh. It wasn't totally possible to do it just due to time constraints, the fact that it was a very quick prototype and the translation team were very busy. So instead, we had an initial meeting with the translator to run through the thinking behind the prototype and what it was trying to achieve. And we then asked them to identify areas where a literal translation of the English into Welsh might be somewhat problematic or difficult, so that they could think of different ways to present that in Welsh or in English even. So that was a really helpful exercise. But also because the translation team is really busy right now, though we had the initial meeting with them, we then collaborated with them using a shared Word document, which was a really effective way of using time. Which showed that you don't need to be constantly face to face. You can do kind of async working. We also did actually meet with the Woodlands Creations team, who are another agile working team within NRW, to start thinking about a possible framework for using bilingual pair writing and content design more broadly in NRW as a key part of how we do content design. So they shared some really interesting insights on the different forms and challenges of pair writing between English and Welsh speakers. And in that, we also proposed a few principles of how we might use pair writing and English-Welsh joint content design within NRW. So things like developing a Welsh style guide that includes some common words and phrases that don't translate very well from English, and some agreed phrasing for those, so it's not constantly something that people are having to do. Making sure you have early conversations between the pair writers so that they understand the users, they understand the needs that kind of underpin the content and why you're writing the content, and also just generally making sure that there's good collaboration between pair writers at every stage of content development, so from the beginning to the end, whether that's in-person meeting or video call meeting, or through digital tools like shared Google Docs or Word Docs or whatever. So that was really interesting, and hopefully will continue to be driven forwards, if I can use some business speak. With regards to user research, we're now finished all of our user research on this project, or this phase of the project for now. We managed to get, I think, 9 external users who are either farmers or consultants or union people who help farmers. 2 of them were conducted in Welsh, 7 of them in English. We had 6 interviews with subject matter experts and process experts in NRW, and 9 other internal interviews as well, plus another 3 interviews with members of area teams who go out and inspect farms. So lots of interesting insights, lots of fascinating things. We're still in the process of analysing all of that, and we're working out how best we can archive that and share that learning to make sure that that is not wasted and it is archived properly, so that whatever happens in the next bit of the project or doesn't happen next in the project, that learning is still there, so then it can become some people can go back to it and still use it, or in other projects where they might have similar issues, they can use the learning from this as well. So that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too long and painful, and was quick and painless instead. We've got 1 more week left of the project. Today, as I'm filming this, is Thursday, the 21st of July. Final day is Wednesday, the 27th. Our next show and tell is Tuesday, the 26th at 3 p.m. And we'll be sharing our recommendations for what happens next there. So please do come along if you can. And yeah, if you have any questions, email me at thomas.hind@digitalpublicservices.gov.wales, or anyone else you know who might be in the project, or leave a comment. I'm sure we'll get back to you at some point. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day, and yeah, bye.